Sorry about that. That's what you get when you get dog food guys trying to run a webinar. So, welcome everybody, and Ryan, I appreciate you having the format and inviting us into this. And it's kind of exciting. We got, I think it's 14 countries and quite a few people that have dialed in or are in the process of dialing in. And the one thing we all have in common is dogs. So it's kind of exciting to see you guys taking the time, really in doing kind of a continuing education. So I am one of the owners of Kinetic Performance Dog Food, and really what we're here today to do is just kind of open up your eyes to some of the behind the scenes stuff that goes on with dog food and nutrition in general, and most importantly, how to see some of the deficiencies that might be in a diet and how they manifest themselves in your canine partner. And so my business partner and I, John, both run hunting dogs. So we spend a lot of time training dogs and work with dogs. And so we understand the commitment that you guys undertake. So what I'd like to do first is thank Ryan and all of you for joining the presentation. And what we thought we would do is, and this would be helpful, is if everybody puts their computers on mute, and if you go to the top right corner, you'll see view, and if you go to speaker view, that'll give you a better look at the presentation. A couple other things, this is a little bit interactive, so what we're going to do at various times during the presentation, and it shouldn't take more than maybe 45 minutes, is ask a series of questions. So if you have a pen and paper that are handy, I would recommend that you grab it and maybe make some notes. At the end of this, we're going to open up the microphones, and if you have a specific question about maybe an issue that you're having, we'll do our best to answer it. If we can't answer it, we can exchange email addresses and correspond via email. The goal is really just to kind of show you guys some of these challenges that mainstream diets have on working and sporting dogs. So we were hopefully going to be able to send questions through chat bar. We're having some kind of issue with that. So there's a couple of real good websites. One is dogfoodadvisor.com. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great website to go and really kind of look at. It's a independent organization that basically ranks dog foods, and they tell you what they like and what they don't like about certain foods. They don't tell you, they don't give the manufacturer the opportunity to go in and say, hey, you guys said you didn't like beef pulp, and so you gave us a half of a star off because of that, but this is why we put it in. So the other one is AAFCO, AAFCO, which is really kind of a cool website. You can go to it. It's the Association for American Feed Control Officials, and they have an ingredient list on there. So if you just go AAFCO ingredient list, it'll probably pull it up. And that's really kind of a neat document. I'll let you take a look at it when we're going through this. But it's a neat document. So, you might have times where you go, what is beef pulp, or what is chicken byproduct meal? And so it has a list of what those ingredients are. So those are two really cool websites that you can go to and find some information out. So one of the things that is really important is when we talk about working and sporting dogs, and John and I both travel all over the country and in different parts of the world and talk about animal nutrition. The thing that you have to understand is, what is the global market and what does it look like? And so one of the things, if you did grab a pen and paper, and this is a fun game to play, but how many dogs are in the United States? And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a series of questions as I go through this. And then what you can do is circle around and you can write it down, and then I'll give you the answer in a couple slides. But it really is important, and it's amazing how many people, the disparity in the answers. We get everything from 550,000 to 500 million. So how many dogs are in the United States of America? And I'll kind of bring it back in a few minutes. Today's topics, which hopefully you'll find a lot of value in, is the nutritional label. So there's a lot of confusion that goes on in the industry. How do you read a nutritional label? So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in a minute about nutritional labels. We're going to do a little bit of a picture introduction. So I'm going to show you some dogs that we've worked with that are all working dogs. There's a few sporting dogs in here, but primarily these are working dogs with police departments or military teams, some casino dogs. Understanding the dog food market, because this is really important. What are the factors that go into ingredient selection, and what's the scope of the industry and the business? So we're going to talk just briefly about that. If you've got a feeding program that's working for your canine teams or your dogs, we tell you, hey, stay on it. That's great. Some of you guys might have some challenges, like the dog's blowing coat all the time, or he's got loose stool, or he's got huge stool volume. You're feeding 5, 6, 7 cups of food a day. He's chewing on his paws. He's got hot spots. So we're going to talk about all those things and hopefully do it in a fun way, in an educational way. So we'll hit on fuel and performance. We'll hit on some ingredient red flags. And this is really paramount. When you take a dog and you start putting them under a lot of pressure, certain ingredients start to manifest themselves, or deficiencies in the diet start to manifest themselves in working and sporting dogs. And the more pressure that you put a dog under, the more these things start to bubble to the surface. And a lot of times what we're left with is going to veterinarians, and I've spoke in front of a lot of veterinarians. I think there's probably a few on this call, and I'm not here to throw manure on the veterinarians and that type of thing. They do a great job, but they don't get a lot of nutritional training in school, and so there's things that they really don't know why dogs are itching or chewing or on their paws or that type of thing. So we're going to talk about some of the red flagged ingredients. We're going to circle back around to reading the label and some of the tricks of the trade, because there are some games that we can play as a food manufacturer that maybe most consumers don't know about. And then we're going to go back to the pictures that I show you in a minute, take a look at those and show you some of the deficiencies. Hopefully you guys pick them out, but it'll give you the opportunity to kind of learn a little bit, like what to look for in your canine partner. We'll hit on vitamins and minerals, and then we're going to just quickly touch on a couple of other things, grain-free diets. What's the deal behind them? You hear a lot of the stuff from the FDA came out a couple of years ago and goes, whoa, there's a problem. And of course, a lot of the industry was like, no, there's not. So we're going to talk about grain-free diets, gluten-free diets, vegan diets, and raw. So that's kind of the deal. So the first thing I want to do is, if you do have a pen and paper, I'm going to ask you to list the top 5 ingredients on this nutritional profile. And you can look at it, and some of you might say, well, this is easy, Dave. The number 1 ingredient is chicken, and number 2 is corn gluten meal. But the top 5 ingredients are really important when you're looking at pet food, and especially with working and sporting dogs, because the top 5 ingredients make up about 80 to 85% of what's in that food. So it's really paramount that you got clean, identifiable ingredients in the top 5. And so as I'm talking, hopefully you guys are writing it down. Maybe you're sitting there going, come on, Dave, I want to get out of here. But so that's kind of a fun thing to do. This was a canine that I ran into in New York, NYPD Transit. And I think a couple of the guys are on the phone. I know the handler sat in on a presentation that I did out in Las Vegas last week, or a couple of weeks ago. And I hunt behind short hairs. And so when I saw this dog, and normally I won't do that, but I could tell this dog was really in some trouble. And so I went up to the handler and I said, look, I was up there doing some training. I was running a nutritional class for him with the MTA. And when I looked at the dog, I could just tell that this dog was in some trouble. And so I kind of approached the handler. And one of the things that I did was I said, can I take a picture of your dog? And the reason is we like to capture some of these before and after pictures. And so I took a picture from the side, and then I kind of took a closer picture. And what I want you to do is just take a minute and just kind of look at this picture and really study it. And because it's important that you guys start training yourselves to look at your canines maybe differently than maybe you normally are. So there's a couple of areas on this dog that when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I can see some issues that this dog is having. And so there's two in particular on this picture. And so, maybe you see them, maybe you don't, but we're going to circle back around. So if you think you did, then jot them down. And there's going to be a test at the end of this. Ryan will be grading everybody. So hopefully you guys pass. But I barely got out of high school. So, for me to teach is kind of nuts. Here's two more dogs. So the one on the left, or on the red carpet, is a picture of a dog. And I've got a before and after picture. But when you're looking at that dog, you might have dogs like this in your department, or dogs like this in your kennel right now that maybe look this way. And so, take a look a minute and maybe jot down what you see. And then the dog on the right, on my right, I guess it's on your right, I'm not sure, but the dog on the right with the yellow collar, is there anything with that dog that you might see? So again, it's just kind of teaching you to look a little bit different, maybe at the dog than you normally would. Here's a lab somebody sent in from Washington, D.C., and this is a dog that's used with one of our gov teams. And, they took a picture of the dog straight down. They told me they were having some real issues with hot spots, with coat dander. And so I said, hey, just send a picture and, let me see what the dog looks like straight down, and let me see what the dog's ears look like. Believe it or not, you can learn a lot from your dog by his ears. And so kind of a neat type thing. Here's another series of pictures. This is actually the same dog, but this dog had a host of problems, and they were really struggling. Headed to the vet a number of times. And, so these are just two pictures that you can kind of look at. One of them, again, if you look at his ears, you can kind of see this crustacean along his ear lobe. So that tells me a lot when I see that, okay? And so it was really kind of interesting to see that picture. This is another one of the lab where you can kind of see the hot spots. Hopefully you can pick those up. There's one here. There's one on the hip here. And then this is another thing, you might have dogs in your kennel, or, on your department, or in the casino that are, their nails are cracking, or they're chewing on their paws. Believe it or not, a lot of these are diet related. So I don't know, I'm getting feedback from somebody, so make sure you guys are on mute. That might be Jacob Jump, which he's a character. So if it's you, Mr. Jump, I'm not trying to be mean. So getting back to one of the first slides, I said, how many dogs are in the United States? There's an estimated 85 million dogs in the United States, which is kind of crazy when you stop and think about it. But what really gets crazy is when you start looking at how many of the 85 million fall into what we call the working or sporting dog category. And that's why you guys are on this call today, is because you have a working dog. Some of you have working and sporting. And we all have been faced with just trying all these different diets. Why is my dog not putting on weight? Why is he blowing coat? Why is he blowing stool? Why has he got low energy? And so, the majority of that is all diet related. But when you look at 85 million dogs in the United States, there's only about 350 to 500,000 that fall into the working dog or sporting dog category. And so you're talking probably about 25,000 police dogs that are actually deployed right now. There's 100 to 200,000 that are service dogs in the United States. And these include guide dogs, but SAR could be part, so search and rescue. So about 100 to 200,000. There's about 125 to 200,000 or 200,000 dogs that are in the hunting and sporting dog world. So about 350 to 500,000. We don't really get true numbers out of DoD. We work with a lot of the DoD teams, some of the special force guys, but outside of a couple of the specific groups, we don't know how many dogs are really in the military. So the reason that's important, guys, is this is big business. Companies, these are multi-billion dollar companies that are manufacturing a multitude of different products. And so when you look at it, the main category of foods in the United States are controlled, or really well, in the United States, are controlled by 4 major pet food companies. So you got, or major corporations. You got Mars, Del Monte, Colgate-Palmolive, and Nestle. And the reason that this is important is if you look at some of the portfolio, the brand portfolios they have, you'll see everything from Iams, Royal Canin, all the way down to Pedigree. And you go, why would a company have all these different brands? And the reason is they're trying to control shelf space. So when you go into a grocery market, or you go into Petco or PetSmart or Tesco or Kroger, what they want to do is they want to be able to go to that account and they want to be able to offer the entire brand portfolio that locks out everybody else. So you see these big corporations buying up all these companies and these smaller brands, and that's why they're doing it. So nothing wrong with it, but when we talk about it being a big industry, it's $31 billion, and this shows the breakout of the companies that are in there. And again, these are all great products if you're feeding a companion pet, but we're not feeding companion pets. So as we do these presentations around, invariably, if we were together right now, if we were at a canine conference or we were doing a seminar and it was live, I would have people go, hey, I feed Iams. What do you think about Iams? And my response is, hey, it used to be a great food. And they give you that look like, well, what do you mean it used to be a great food? And Iams at one time was an independent brand. It was owned by a single guy in Dayton, Ohio, in the United States. And he was very passionate about the food and the quality of the food. And these big groups are passionate about the food, but they're not really focused on the working and sporting dog. And so he ended up selling Iams in 2004 to Procter & Gamble. At the time, it was the largest acquisition in Procter & Gamble history. And when you think about a global company the size of Procter & Gamble, and the largest acquisition they ever had was a dog food company or a brand of $1.6 billion, which, we throw those numbers around like loosey-goosey now. Nobody thinks 1.6 billion is a lot, but in 2004, 1.6 billion was a lot of money. And so if you're a stockholder of a publicly traded company, the first thing that you're going to do is say, hey, when are you going to get my money back? Or how's that going to pay in dividends? And so what companies will do is they start looking at things, and what they will do is actually look for ways to drive up what we call ROI, return on investment. They paid $1.6 billion. What are you going to do to get our money back? And so a couple things are pretty easy. One, you gain greater distribution. Well, Iams was a global company. Okay, they had distribution all over the world. So gaining distribution or market share was going to be a little bit tougher. The second thing that you can do is you can raise the price per pound. So you'll see companies will take a price increase, and we're seeing it all over the globe right now with the effects of the pandemic. But you see pricing go up. One of the tricks, and you'll see this, and we're seeing it in consumer packaged goods all the time. They shorten the size of the bag, so they go from a 35-pound bag to a 32.5-pound bag, and they say new and improved. Well, what's new and improved is their profit margin, and maybe they changed the packaging a little bit, but really what they did was they took 2.5 pounds out of the bag and they're charging you the same price, and it's new and improved. So another way is you start seeing them find more cost-effective ingredients. So they have a big marketing department that goes out and says, chickpeas are really popular right now, and kale. And so we're going to put chickpeas and kale in the food. And, they're just doing it to change the nutritional profile a little bit. So Procter & Gamble in 2014 sold Eukanuba, Mars, and Natura, and Iams for $2.9 billion to Mars Candy Company. So pretty good ROI. Back in 2018, General Mills jumped into the fray, buying Blue Buffalo for $8.6 billion. So the only reason I'm sharing this with you is I want you to know kind of how the industry is controlled, and really kind of bring you into the loop on what does that mean to people that are working with their dogs. I mean, John and I would, now I don't have any dogs right now because I travel a lot, but John's got 3 labs. So when he's going out and he's working in the field with his dogs, they might cover 20 to 25 miles in a 4-hour hunt. And so, recovery is paramount. And one of the things that these big corporations know is that, especially in the United States, I can't speak for all the other countries that are on the phone or on this, but in the United States, these big companies know that our population is humanizing dogs. As we have empty nesters going out of the kids are going away and grandparents are getting older, they get their dogs, and these aren't dogs, they're members of our family. And we all feel the same way about it. All of us on the call right now love our pets and we treat them like our family. But the companies know that we're humanizing our pets. And so what they're doing is humanizing the food. And they're actually making the food more appealing to the population and the palate of the consumer. And what I mean by that is, and I was out, I had to throw this up there for all my friends that are out in Las Vegas. I was at Super Zoo, which is an industry-wide trade show about 2 years ago. And up on this stage, they had all these hairdressers, and they were doing this to these poor dogs. And I was just thinking, oh my God, what are we doing? And there were people carrying dogs around in baby carriages and a whole bit. And so jumping into kind of it, you start seeing it in the packaging, so it manifests itself. And in the one for Abound, I mean, that's a beautiful presentation. I mean, that's got a well-balanced diet. It's got blueberries, and my gosh, if we could feed our kids this, it'd be awesome. But so they start packaging, and they're packaging their product look a little bit more palatable to a human. And then the other thing that they started doing was you started seeing everybody call out real chicken's the number one ingredient, or salmon's the number one ingredient, or beef, or whatever protein. They're calling out things that are the number one ingredient. And when you see a whole industry calling out, hey, the number one ingredient, you have to start asking yourself, and this is what this is about. This is about teaching you guys to really start asking yourselves, what does that mean? What does it mean new and improved? Or what does it mean when it says the number one ingredient is? And what they're doing is they're taking advantage of the water that's in that protein. And I want to share that with you in a minute. But let's just talk about you guys now. When you're talking about feeding a canine athlete, it is paramount that you find a food or a feed that has a clean nutritional profile and that is really designed for the performance of this dog. You guys don't, if you have a Harley Davidson or if you have a nice sports car, you're not putting an 84 octane in it and expecting that car to go out or that motorcycle to go out and perform at the level that it would at a 94% octane. So the sole performance or purpose of a performance food is to provide the best concentration of nutrients in food as you can in the smallest amount. Because when you start putting a dog out in the field and running them 20 to 25 miles a day, or you start checking baggage at O'Hare, or you're doing subway sweeps in NY and New York and checking 2,000 passengers in an hour, that dog's under a lot of stress. So you have to feed them differently. And, this just puts it into perspective. These two dogs are not under the same amount of stress. So when you look at it, and, we came out of the sporting dog industry. Now, this is not John and I. If this was trophies for drinking beer, we'd probably be in this picture. But these are two guys that this was the end of the season. This was after a 7-day hunt test. At the end of the season, I think they covered 15 or 17,000 miles over about a 3-month period going to all these hunt tests. And the dog that's closest to the steps is a 9-year-old female that just got done competing at a high level. This was a national championship and competed for 7 days. And so if you look at the tone of that dog, a 9-year-old female, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about performance food. And that dog weighs about 50 pounds, which means that it's only eating about 2.5 cups, and I mean true cups, I don't mean scoops, 2.5 cups of food per day. So when you start talking about performance food, if you guys are feeding large volumes of food to your dogs to try to maintain their weight or their endurance or their energy, you want to start looking for a different feed, okay? So we were at a military conference and having a few beers, and we were talking about it. And I had just done one of these seminars, and somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you're really passionate. Why are you passionate?" I go, "Well, I only get to hunt 5 to 7 days a year, maybe 10. I want to be able to go out and hunt with my dog as hard on the third day of that hunt as he is the first day." And and he said, "What happens if your dog runs out of energy?" And I go, "Well, we just kennel the dog, we hydrate it, we put our guns away, and we start drinking beer." And I go, "Well, what about you guys?" And he goes, "We don't have that luxury. If our dog runs out of energy, somebody could die." And when that guy said that to us, I remember looking over at John and I thought, this is a game changer. See, we started the company for our dogs. We wanted something that we could go out and perform, and our dogs would perform at a high level. And so when we started looking at the nutrition, every single ingredient, and we made a commitment to each other, every single ingredient that we put in our feed is there for a specific purpose for the dog. It's not for an ROI. It's not to meet, numbers in Q3 or whatever. It's there for the performance of that dog. And it got real with us when we started working with military, police, casino dogs, people that are on the front lines with these dogs, expect them to perform at a high level every day. And so when we talk about a performance food, it's an absolute passion of ours.
Yeah, I just like a decaf.
Okay. Oh,
Yep.
No, that's somebody else. So a performance food should be, and we talked on this, calorically dense, have superior vitamin trace minerals, have identifiable protein and fat sources in the top 5 ingredients, and be formulated to meet the needs of the canine. So what do I mean by that? We're going to take now we're going to dive in. So if you guys were paying attention for the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes, now you need to. There's 6 basically buckets that make up dog food. Okay, it's proteins, it's fats, starches, fiber, moisture, and vitamin and minerals. That is the only thing the majority of dog food companies have in common. Okay, so there's 6 contributing buckets, if you will, that go into that, and that's where it stops. And what I mean by that is you guys at the beginning of this were given a test, okay? And if we were in a room right now, I'd be like, okay, who put down chicken as the number 1 ingredient? And if you're raising your hand or you're shaking your head on here right now, you just failed the first question on the test. Chicken is not the number 1 ingredient. It is by pre-cooked weight, but it's not the number 1 ingredient. And what I mean by that is I broke out the ingredients down that chart. And so here's one of the tricks of the trade. I get the benefit as a manufacturer of listing the ingredients by pre-cooked weight. So if I've got 1,000 pounds of chicken and I put it into a vat and I cook it down into a kibble, I only get about 250 pounds of protein. But I get to tell you as a consumer, the number 1 ingredient is chicken, okay? Because I'm cooking all the water weight out of the chicken. And so you as a consumer are going, I don't know what's going on with my dog. I mean, I'm feeding this food to them. The number 1 ingredient is chicken. It's a good protein. But the reality is on this formula, the number 1 ingredient is corn gluten meal. So I'm going to go out and run my dog 20 miles a day for 3 or 4 days in a row, and I want him to perform on corn gluten meal. The number 1 ingredient drops to number 5 or 6 on this panel. So chicken drops down to buy the whole grain corn, okay? And I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, it's kind of hard to do it, but you go down and you go corn gluten meal, brewer rice, animal fat. Well, now I just told you that it's important to have fat and protein in the top 5 ingredients, okay? But let me explain a couple of the games. You want to find meal-based protein. And the reason I say that is if this was chicken meal as the number 1 ingredient, chicken meal is already dehydrated, okay? Meaning if I take 1,000 pounds of chicken meal and I put it into the ingredient profile and I cook it into a kibble, I get 960 pounds of protein, okay? Because there's only about a 4% moisture. Chicken meal is already dehydrated, okay? So we take the chicken and it's already cooked down into a meal, okay? So we go down and you go, okay, Dave, that's just the chicken, but animal fat is in there, and you said animal fat in the top 5 ingredients is important, and it is. But what kind of animal is that? So what happens is we talk about identifiable protein and identifiable fat sources. Animal fat could vary. Okay, so fat is bought on the open market from all these different processing houses, rendering houses, and they put it all into a big thing and they go, hey, you need 5,000 gallons of animal fat? No problem. And so then they put it in, companies will put it into their feed. And what ends up happening is you might open up the bag and go, man, this doesn't even look like the same color kibble. It smells different. What's going on? And you call the manufacturer and you go, hey, what'd you guys do? And we didn't do anything. And you're looking at it going, there's a noticeable difference. Well, the reason is that animal fat could be any kind of animal. So sometimes we have people go, oh, my dog's allergic to chicken. And I go, what are you feeding? And they go, this. And I go, wow, it could be allergic to corn. Now, I'm from the Midwestern part of the United States. And growing up in the 70s, I'm kind of an old guy, but growing up in the 70s, we used to have a thing called knee high by the 4th of July. And that meant when the corn crop at the 4th of July, if it was up to your knee, you were going to have a really good corn crop. You drive through Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, any of the producer or the grain producing states in the United States, and by the 4th of July, the corn is tasseled out. We're also stripping everything out of the corn. We're doing corn ethanol or, alcohol. We're doing ethanol production. Every food ingredient in the United States has some type of corn or corn byproduct meal or something in there. So, but when we talk about animal fat, you want it to be identifiable. Okay. So that's something to look for, a little trick. Maybe it'll help you. Okay. Now, if you look right below animal fat, you see poultry byproduct meal and you go, hey, Dave, you said meals are good and meals are good, but what kind of poultry is that? Okay, so in other words, in the fall in the United States, we're harvesting a lot of turkey, so it could be turkey byproduct meal. In the spring, it's Cornish game hen. In the summer, it's chicken. So make sure it's identifiable. Okay, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more on that later on, and hopefully that gives you guys some really good ammunition to start looking into your nutritional profiles. But as they say on the Shamu commercial, wait, there's more. So going on, why is it important for the dog food to be calorically dense and have really good vitamin trace minerals? And the reason is the digestive tract in the dog is so much shorter than most mammals. And so the food isn't in there as long. And so when you start pounding food into a dog and you start pounding that dog with stress, and it comes in a lot of different ways. I mean, we work with breeders all over the country that are, raising dogs. There's kennel stress. There's stress from, a dog sees you come down in your uniform, or he, here's a radio. There's a lot of different forms of stress that dogs have. And it's important to understand the nutrients that you're putting in that are coming out of that food, they better be caloric dense. And if they're not, you're going to start having issues manifesting themselves in diet. Okay, so I'm going to jump on. I like to use this. My grandpa used to say it all the time. The most expensive tool you'll ever buy is a cheap one. And I'm like, Grandpa, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, I'd end up buying a cheap tool. It would break. I'd bust up my knuckles, and then I'd have to go buy another tool, and he'd just sit there looking at me. But we feel the same way about food. If you're buying a cheaper food or you're buying a food on price, you need to look at the volume that you have to feed to keep that dog going. If you're feeding a dog more than a cup per 20 pounds, a measuring cup, more than 20 pounds, if you're feeding much more than that, you're burning up a lot of money. Okay, so less in, less out. If you got a clean diet, you feed 20 to 30% less. Okay, you get longer service, and lower vet bills. So, it's not all about the price per pound. Okay, so how to read a dog. Everybody knows this. Everybody on this call knows. And if my dog's stools look like cow patties, there's a problem. The stools on your dog should be like Tootsie Rolls. Okay, they shouldn't be voluminous. They should be, look like cow patties. They should be nice and tight. Okay, so one of the ways to look at are you feeding your dog the right food, is look at the stool and the stool quality and the volume. It should be nice and tight. You should be able to, I used this a couple weeks ago in a presentation, you should be able to chip it out of your yard into your neighbor's yard with like a 9-iron or something if you're a golfer. It should hold up, to get it out of your yard. Now, I want to go back to this because this is Canine Sully. And Canine Sully was named after the captain that landed the plane that had bird strikes and landed on the river. I can't think of the name of the river, but anyway, the Hudson River. Thank you, Carl. Carl's one of our guys in the back, but it was a Hudson River. So I went up to Kevin, who he and I got to be really good friends, and I'm like, Bud, your dog's in trouble. You can see this dog is hunched up. So when I showed the dog's picture to you at the beginning, if you looked at it and said, he's really hunched up and he just doesn't look like he feels well, like when you got an achy stomach, that was the first thing I noticed about the dog. The second thing was, I said, Kevin, how much food are you feeding this dog a day? And he said, well, we're up to 7 cups. And I'm like, this dog doesn't weigh 40, 45 pounds, Kevin. And I go, and so I took a picture of it down. And if you look, you got the bloating in his midsection. He's got no hips at all. And the other thing is if you looked at these two areas when I showed it at the beginning, and you see the coat dander that's up here, you can see this flaking, right? So coat dander is a sign of a heavily based, plant-based diet, all right? And the dog starts manifesting itself in coat dander. The other thing that really caught my eye and really started to scare me was if you look, and I can't do it, but if you look right down here, the actual ear, the tip of his ear looks like a saw blade. And what that told me was that dog was not absorbing any of the minerals that were in the food. And I'm going to show you the trick on the minerals, because that's another place that we can really, let's say, take advantage of the consumer on minerals. So there's 2 areas on this that really cause concern. The chafing on his ear, so you can see it up here, all right? You can see some fraying here, and the coat quality or the dander, okay? So the next picture, this is a little bit better picture of the dander. You see real coarse hair. He was losing a lot of hair. I mean, you could just take your hand and rub it along his back, and typically you don't see that really with short hairs. You'll see it with your longer hair breeds, your Shepherds and your Mals and stuff like that. So this is the same dog after 4 weeks, after switching over from the food that I highlighted on the panel. So that's what the dog was eating, 7 cups of food a day. And this is 4 weeks later after we switched them. And you can see the posture change is probably the biggest thing that you notice in the picture. I said, Kevin, give me a picture, in the same kind of lighting, and this is what he sends me. So be careful what you ask the NYPD for, but it is what it is. We got to work with what we have. And so I said, hey, give me a picture of his ear, and he sent this. But one of the things you can notice is the coat dander is gone.
Yeah.
The coat quality, the shine is there, right? You can't really see his ear, but if you look down here, and I bust his chops every time I see the guy, he's a great guy, but I still need to get a good picture of the ear, but the ear is better. This is the dog 6 months later. They were doing some training down in Central Park, but look at the focus of the dog. After 6 months, he's got beautiful posture. He's got nice muscles built up. He's just really focused on whatever he's looking at there. So it's kind of a neat picture. This is one of the other pictures that I showed you in the beginning. And this is the same dog 6 weeks apart. And all we did was basically change the diet of that dog. In the picture where he's on the carpet, what that dog, when I started talking to Donnie, and this is a canine handler out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and he came around the corner and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you. That scared the hell out of me, but because he was fully dressed up. He had just got done working the dog, and here I am loading a trailer. And anyway, make a long story short, you can see the difference in the dog's coat quality. You can also see the difference in his eyes. If you look at his eyes and his ears, just the difference alone is significant. And Pedro, it was really cool. I got a call from Donnie about It was probably about 6 months ago. So it was right towards the end of the summer last year. And he said, we just got done. We were on an 8-hour track, urban track. And Pedro found the gun. It was hidden under a car. And the police officer involved shooting. And the officer survived and that type of thing. But they found the gun after tracking 8 hours in downtown Cincinnati, which was really kind of cool. But that's what we're talking about. When we talk about the endurance of the dog, it's paramount. This is just 2 side-by-sides, June 20th or 22nd, 2020. You can see the ribs on the dog here. This is the same dog. You can see a difference in the colorations of the dog. It's less than a month. We've taken care of the weight problem with that dog. Another handler, it was really kind of neat. He sent this to me. He sat in on one of my classes, just like you guys are doing. And he emailed me and said, Dave, I got a problem. I don't know what to do. Dog's blowing stool. He's blowing coat. We're trying everything. We got him on Apoquel. He's chewing his paws. They're bleeding all over the place. Same dog. You can see just a coat difference in a month with that dog. So really kind of neat to see. This is Border Patrol. So I was down in Tucson, Arizona, working with these guys, and then they actually came into a conference out in Las Vegas, and the guy said, you gave a seminar, and then I just sat through your other seminar, and we got a dog we're feeding 9 cups of food a day to, and this is what he looks like. And I said, well, we'll get a bag of feed to you, and I think we can solve your problem. They did 1 week of cut-in. So we recommend, if you're switching over to a food, and you guys are all professionals, so you know this, but you do a cut-in. So for the first week, he did a cut-in, and then this is 3 weeks after. So this is 1 month apart, and he was just blown away. They went from 9 cups of feed a day to 4.5. So really kind of a cool story. This was one of the dogs at the beginning. So you see this dog right here, and the ears, where he's got no skin on his ears, okay? So if you got dogs that are in your kennel or on your team, and they're having issues like this, it's diet related, okay? It's not environmental. It's not they're allergic to something. They're allergic, and I'm gonna tell you what they're allergic to in a minute, but it is a diet related issue. And this is the same dog. You see him standing there, his ears have filled in, but you start seeing muscle build up here. Coat quality has changed dramatically, so really kind of cool to see. Here's a cracking in the paw, in the toenail. So we've helped solve that problem in dogs just through diet change. So, and I'm not going to bore you with all these pictures, but you can see this is a washout of a dog. This is the same dog 6 weeks later. So just the side-by-side coat difference is pretty amazing. Coat quality there. This is kind of neat. This is that same dog. This is out of Pennsylvania. But one of the things to look at is, now I know there's probably some veterinarians on here. We call them eye boogers. I know there's probably a scientific name, and Carl always gets a kick out of it. He's like, you got to find out what these things are. But right here by their eyes, you'll see a crustacean start to build up. This is the same dog. He's like, man, he doesn't get the eye boogers anymore. And I'm like, okay. But the other thing that's kind of cool is you start seeing muscle build up in his cheek right here. And so that's kind of a cool thing. Filling into the ears. So you see some fill in there. So profile of a healthy working dog, you guys know this, but lean muscle mass, high energy, able to recover, it's paramount. It's paramount in everything that I'm doing with the dog, everything that you guys are doing. Healthy skin, coat, paws, and pads. Everything that controls that dog is controlled by his gut. If his gut is out of whack, that whole dog is out of whack. So you might have vets say, hey, give your dog some pureed pumpkin. And what they're trying to do is reset the probiotic and prebiotic balance in that dog. So, but body condition scoring, I know you guys are probably familiar with this. In the hunting world, we'd like to run the dogs at like a 2.5. So we don't want them to be as muscular as maybe the working dog segment, but that's a way to look at it. Proteins, and this is important. So when we talk about performance diet, here we go back and we're visiting the proteins, fats, carbohydrates. So you want a meat-based, preferably meal, okay? Named sources, easily digested, and we prefer to see multiple sources in a profile. So you want to see chicken meal and chicken byproduct meal, egg, fish, turkey, whatever. You want to see multiple meals that are in there. That's important. Now, here's another, peek into the industry and stuff like that. Not all proteins are equal. And here's what we don't have to tell you as a manufacturer. There's a lot of you guys out there that are probably feeding a 30-20 formula, 30% protein, 20% fat, right? So I can see heads nodding all over. So you're thinking that you're feeding that dog 30% protein and that 30% protein is all animal-based. We don't have to tell you as a manufacturer what percentage of that 30% is animal-based and what percentage of that 30% is plant-based. And that's really important because your dogs process plant-based proteins totally different than they do animal-based proteins, okay? So I can tell you the diet that we showed, that I put that thing up, that's got a 58% animal contribution, protein contribution, and the rest of it is corn. And that's really important to understand. So if you've got a food and you're going, hey, it's a 30% protein, 20% fat, I would recommend calling the company up or trying to find out from somebody, hey, what percentage of your protein is animal and what percentage is fat? We're the highest in the industry. On our 30-20, 94% of the protein comes from animal. Okay, it's really important. So that's something to look out for. And I don't have to tell you, so corn could be in there. All right. So fats, it's the same way. You want animal-based fats and you want identifiable. You don't want something that says poultry fat or, animal fat. You want it to say what fat it is so that you know if your dog's having an issue where the source is. Now, earlier in the conversation, I said, when we sat down and started developing this, every single ingredient that we have on our profile is there for a reason. And one of the things that we have, and we get people all the time, they go, okay, guys, why'd you put beet pulp in here? And we can give that answer. Okay, guys, why'd you put sunflower oil in your food? And the reason is in 1998 or 1990, Auburn University, Dr. Gillette, great paper to look at, did a research project on certain oils contributed to dogs' diets and the increase in the capability of the scent factor, or the ability to smell. And so it was backed up by, I think it was Auburn, Alabama, and then Ohio State. Great product. So look up Dr. Gillette, and that's why we put sunflower oil in our food. So if you guys are working with your dogs and your dogs are dependent on their nose and you don't have a certain oil in your food, I would highly recommend adding a tablespoon of sunflower oil to your feed every day, and you're going to see an increased scent capability of the dog. Or you can just feed dog. Either. So carbohydrates, normally John would jump into this, but carbohydrates, if it does matter what they are. So when we sit there and say, hey, dogs have a hard time with sweet potatoes, corn, barley, oats. I mean, think about it. If you go to the doctor and he says you're 30 pounds overweight and you need to change your diet to a heart healthy, he goes, you need to eat oatmeal. And the reason is kind of, regulates everything, if you know what I mean. And so you don't want to see that in a working dog. You don't want to see barley, oats, carrots, sweet potatoes. Now, if you're selling to companion pet, we couldn't get our kids to eat sweet potatoes growing up. So if I can get my dog to eat them, that's great. Or Rachel Ray, she likes to feed dogs kale. So, and she might be on the call, so I'm sorry, Rachel. But anyway, vitamins, trace minerals. This is another place that we can really hoodwink you. Okay, they're not all the same, guys. So what you want to look for, and if you look at this right here, this is that ingredient profile again. And when we talk about the chafing on the ears and the little saw blades on the ears, if you see the word sulfate or sulfide or chloride after the mineral or after the vitamin, about 80% of that ends up in the stool on the ground. And it's really important to know, because in order for a mineral to be absorbed in a mammal, okay, so a dog or you and I, it has to be attached to a carbon. So we showed you the slide earlier of how short the intestinal tract is on a dog. Okay, the food's not in there a long time. All right, so the mineral has to wait and find a empty carbon or a free carbon to attach to so it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. If it doesn't, it ends up in the stool. So sulfate, sulfide, or chloride-based minerals or vitamins are not attached to a carbon, and they're inexpensive. Okay, so what you want to look for is you want to see, and some of the companies are getting smart, so you might see a zinc sulfate and a zinc protonate. And you got to go, well, why would they put a chelated mineral and a sulfate mineral in the same profile? And it's a pretty easy answer if you stop and think about it for a minute. All right. So when you look at vitamin trace minerals on your package, you want organic trace minerals that have the word protonate or chelate after them. All right, because it's going to get absorbed into the body. So when you see the changes in the dog's coats, when you see the changes in their ears, when they stop blowing stool or hot spots and shedding like crazy or have coat dander, it's because the minerals are being absorbed. All right, so chloride bad, sulfate bad, right? Orange man bad. I'm sorry, shouldn't have said that. I just got the look. So that's something. So sulfate, you got it. All right. What about grain-free? You know, we do get asked this question all the time. And here's what's crazy about grain-free. And I'm going to show you a slide. All right? This is Google trend for gluten-free diet. The yellow graph represents human searches for gluten-free diets for human beings, starting in 2001, going through 2018. All right? The blue line represents humans searching for a grain-free dog food. Okay, so when I said we're humanizing our food to mirror, us, the companies know that. And so when they saw this trend line, they're like, hey, this is a hot, let's jump on this. So I defy you to go into any pet food store now and walk down the pet food aisle and find foods that aren't grain-free or gluten-free. And the reality is there's a problem. So if you're feeding grain-free diet to your dog, you do want to look at maybe getting away from it. And the reason is the FDA came out and said, hey, there's something going on here. We're seeing cardiomyopathy in breeds that never had it before. Large breed dogs that are having problems. And one of the things is, and you hear, I think it's Turine, I wish John could jump in right now, Tyrene or whatever, one of those ring things. But the reality is dogs are not processing. They're putting legumes in or peas in, and the dogs are having some real problems processing that. So when you look at the grain-free diet, and now the problem is, and the reason that it all got tamped down, there's billions of dollars of grain-free food in the pipeline right now. So all of a sudden, everybody's like, hey, what happened to that grain-free thing? And the FDA is probably getting pounded by people. So if you're on grain-free, I would highly recommend you look at another product to get off. This was a thing that was done. So it's not just Dave and John telling you, well, John's not saying anything, but it's not just Dave telling you. But if you look at this, what you want to do, this is a neat thing that was done by Cleo Parker. And it really talks about it and it highlights it and says, the veterinarian community is not convinced grain-free foods are more beneficial than other well-formulated foods. But it also goes on to say the reason that this whole diet explosion on grain-free was all marketing. So just something for the thought process. So probiotics, prebiotics, really important in your dog. Pumpkin is a great balancer, but if your dog's guts are off, they're going to hit it. And we developed a product for sporting dogs, and a lot of guys use it as a working dog. If your dog, you're doing a track and your dog's eating grass, there's something going on. Soluble and insoluble, you really want to understand the fiber that's in the food. And one of the things that we do, and this is kind of kind of a give back to the community, the working dog community, and really the sporting dog. If you guys are out there and you're going, oh my God, everything this guy's talking about, I'm doing wrong, or I'm looking at my food bag right now. What am I doing? If you guys look at a food and you go, hey, I'm feeding this, will you guys do an analysis on it? You can email us the nutritional profile. We'll tell you what we like in it, and we'll tell you what we don't like. We're not here to try to sell you Kinetic. We're here to try to help you guys identify and give you some of the knowledge, that type of thing. We'll even tell you what other foods are out there that are, designed more for performance dogs. So anyway, we talked about the oil capabilities and stuff like that. Make sure to use some sunflower oil. It does improve. Glucosamine and chondroitin. This is always a fun one. We get people come up and they go, oh, I'm feeding the food and it's got chondroitin and glucosamine in it. And I go, oh, okay. Well, here's the deal. When we were talking about I take a vat and I put 1,000 pounds of chicken in there and I throw all this other stuff in and, I cook it down into a kibble. You know what I get to do? If I take a thimble of glucosamine and I put it in that vat, guess what I get to tell the consumer? I get to tell you that we have glucosamine and chondroitin in our food. And I'm going to charge you more for that. Okay. So if your dog is having some issues with hip, get a supplement, augment his diet. You could get it out of the diet, but you're going to pay about $400 for a 30-pound bag. Okay. So you're not going to get it out of the feed. I don't care what brand you're feeding. If it's under $300 a bag, you're not getting enough to make a difference. So save yourself some money there. Okay. Raw versus homemade, or raw and homemade versus kibble. And this is a great question. Raw is actually a good diet if you do it right, and if you know what you're doing, and if you're augmenting properly with your vitamin trace minerals. We like to say it's a PETA diet, and not PETA like the people that are, picketing the Iditarod, which is kind of a cool thing. But PETA is in pain in the ass. Raw diets are terrible. And so from that standpoint, I mean, how do you go on a hunting trip for 5 days and take a bunch of raw stuff in a freezer or whatever? And the other thing is, and think about this, most people don't live in a single person home with their dog and they throw a chicken quarter on the floor and their dog gobbles it up. Your dogs have the intestinal capability to absorb and to kill off salmonella. You don't. So it's a tough diet to feed. It's a good diet, but it's also, you better have your ducks in a row, because cross-contamination could be an issue. So I saw a post on, I think it was LEO or Facebook or something like that a couple weeks ago, and guy threw a chicken bone on the floor, and all I kept, or not a chicken bone, it was a whole quarter, and the dog's dragging it all over, and there's slime everywhere, and I'm like, he lives alone, because there's no way he's got anybody else living in that house with him. But so that's that. Most important thing is consumables, is water. Your dogs need to hydrate. One of the things that we do in the hunting industry is we will take a handful of kibble and we'll throw it in a water bottle before we start working the dog. We let it start breaking down, okay? And it breaks down into almost like a flavored water. It's really important when you're working with your dogs to make sure they're hydrated. It avoids the crash and everything else. So it's a great little trick out of the hunting trade. That's a freebie for my brothers and sisters with working dogs. So you won't be charged for that, but it is on the test. So the other thing we talked about, Apoquel a little bit, I touched on it. If you change the diet and you address the diet, you should be able to alleviate all the itching. Apoquel, long-term studies, this is a pretty dangerous drug. So if you got dogs that are on Apoquel for an extended period of time, there's been some research done that it causes some issues with liver damage. I'm not here saying it does or it doesn't. I'm just saying if you can create and solve the problem through diet, I would highly recommend you do that. So this just shows the side-by-side that we did. Somebody came to us and said, hey, here's 4 products. How's it look? That's the comparisons that we would do for you. This shows our product overview. We got 4 basic products. They get 4 protein sources in them. What's cool about our product, and we developed this for the hunting industry. So, we're coming to the end of the season, right? Actually, we're done now at the end of March. But what we wanted to do was be able to feed our dogs the same volume of food, just lower the octane level. So what's kind of different about our food is everything in the nutritional profiles is the same. The only thing that changes is a protein-fat ratio. So I could take a dog and have him on a 30 protein, 20 fat diet. I could feed him that this morning, and I could drop him to the 26% protein, 16% fat tonight, and not have any loose stool or intestinal upset. Well, we didn't realize when we developed that. So when we start coming into the season, so August, we start, working the dogs out more. We can take them from a maintenance diet to a higher caloric diet without any intestinal upset or, transfer period or whatever. We didn't realize how this would work for the DoD teams. So we feed a lot of our special force teams that could be stateside and then get a call up. And so they go from a maintenance diet to a high octane diet overnight, and they can do that on the fly, literally. So kind of a neat little thing. There's 3 supplements that we develop. One is for hydration. So the one in the center is loaded with bovine plasma. What that does is it enhances the thirst it enhances water to make it more palatable so a dog will drink it. So hydro, we develop for hunting dogs. They come out. A lot of times these dogs are just like, I don't want to drink anything. So the BIOS is for gut health, and then the mass is for weight gain and stuff. So sometimes if your dog gets into an environmental, the BIOS is a great product. These are some of the branches. Nobody really cares, but we're pretty proud of it. We're the only guys in the industry that have 2 active duty special force guys on our pro staff, which is kind of cool. So that's a neat little thing. Current distribution, you can find our food a lot of different places. We are on tractorsupply.com, so they'll ship it right to your house. We got Hubbard, we got Chewy.com, we got bulk ship, delivery, GSA, the whole bit. And then there's 2 things that I wanted to share this before I get done, and we'll open it up for questions. There's 2 really cool events. If you guys are ever looking for, something to do for some extra training, ATK9 is a 21 conference that's at Muscatatuck Urban Training Center, which is really a cool place. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it or been there, but it's run by our DoD. It is awesome. So Muscatatuck Urban Training Center, and it's ATK9. They got some phenomenal trainers coming in. It's real life-based scenario training. And then there's the K9 Olympics, which is always a lot of fun. They usually have anywhere from 15 countries or 18 countries competing, 150 teams, a lot of fun. So with that, I think what we can do, and we didn't have the chat, but I'm going to go on mute. And John's going to open up, hopefully, if you guys have any questions, or I can stay open. But if you do have questions, these are emails that you can email us. It's pretty simple, david@kineticdogfood.com or John. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm not sure what to do at this point.
I can jump in, Dave. I guess if anybody's got questions, just so that this doesn't go nuts, you can just raise your hand using the reaction button there at the bottom right of the screen, and we can just call you out, call your name, and let you go ahead and ask it, and let everybody else benefit from whatever the response is. Okay, so we're getting some.
Hello?
Turn on my fucking camera.
Okay. Hey, yeah, Carrie, what's your question?
Yeah, hi. I have 3 working dogs. 2 of them are retired. They're live find search dogs. My older retired guy is 12. He also is a cancer survivor, and we just got diagnosed with severe arthritis in his hip. They get fed maybe 2¼ cups per a cup and a quarter per feeding. That's morning and dinner time. I'm not sure if it's from the medication that he's on or from all the medication from his cancer surgery and for his bad hips now. But his coat is horrible. I used to get comments on him 2 years ago, how well and how black and shiny his coat is. Now it looks like it's just, like you said, bristly, and he's blowing his coat, which I never had any issues with. And my other retired search dog is 7. She has early hip dysplasia, so she had to be retired, and she's on medication for that. She just blew her coat out like terrible. Like I've never had fur balls blowing around in my house. And then I also have a 2-year-old Lifeline certified dog. He's doing pretty good, but this has got me thinking as to what I'm feeding them. Could it be from medication? I'm just worried about my older 2, I should say, right now.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, could it be medication? It could absolutely be medication. Just like us, when you start putting things into your dog's system that they're not used to, they can run into issues like that. It could also be the diet. I know a lot of times veterinarians will prescribe a prescription diet, and while those might
clearly go into that shit
to meet a specific short-term need, they're usually not very good nutrition-wise. So.
You going, Gary?
Yeah, I've been feeding them Hill Science Diet, Healthy Mobility. Their weight is good. They're not overweight. I don't overfeed them. They don't get a ton of snacks, and they don't get people food. But like I said, my concerns would be obviously for their longevity and their healthy well-being for the rest of what they have for their lives. But I'm also worried about other stuff that I can't see, like their coat and things like that.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some things you could do to improve the coat. One of the things, in my experience, Hills is not a food that uses a lot of animal-based omega-3s in it, fish meal, fish oil, stuff like that. So
okay.
A diet with more omega-3 fatty acids, animal-based omega-3 fatty acids would probably help the coat significantly with or without a change in medication.
Okay. Does your foods offer that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So obviously they're active. We still go for a 1 or 2 mile walk every day, if not more. But from your slides there with your food, would that be the active? I guess they're not really working dogs anymore. But like I said, they're not couch potatoes either.
I would almost, for a couple of your older dogs, if it's coat specific activity you're looking to deal with, I would actually recommend our puppy formula. And the reason is all of our foods are all life stage. So it's not like there's anything, specific about our puppy formula that wouldn't be suitable for adults. But the reason I'd recommend that is we put more fish oil in that formula than we put in any of our others, to provide the extra omega-3s and DHA for puppy development. And it also helps keep those senior dogs helps them stay sharp, but without giving them too many calories. So I'd probably try the puppy.
Okay. And that helps with all the minerals and vitamins or whatever as they age. Cause I know as we age, I take a little more vitamins myself too, but,
yeah, absolutely.
That help with the aging dog and the senior dogs.
Absolutely. And we feed that to a surprising number of senior dogs. We only use organic trace minerals because they're absorbed at a much higher rate than non-organic trace minerals. So yeah, your dog's going to be better shape. I think within a bag, you'd see a significant difference.
And what would you recommend for the amount of feedings for each time they get fed, like morning and evening?
You're probably going to, I would start at, because you're going to have to mix and transition it. I would start about where you're at right now, although I would expect you're going to probably have to reduce that once you get them fully transitioned over.
So less than a cup a day for each of them, or per feeding, I should say, twice a day.
For those older dogs that aren't burning as much, I think you're probably going to be somewhere between where you are now and maybe a cup per feeding. So somewhere in that two. Right now, it sounds like you're feeding about 2.5 cups a day total.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you're going to be somewhere between where you're at and 2 cups a day, and
Okay.
it depends on your dog.
Okay. And last question, I'm sorry to hog up all your time. But my 2-year-old who just got certified for live find, he's about 54. They're all American labs, by the way. He's very energetic. He's very playful. He loves to work and stuff. Right now I'm feeding him Pro Plan, which is what the breeder was feeding him. I mean, he's at an ideal weight. I mean, the vet even commented on him, but every once in a while, his stools are loose and then they're fine. And I took him off for a loose leash walk today and they're all grazing grass. So when you mentioned that grazing grass, I'm like, geez. So the active for him, or? I
would say, the grass thing, what Dave said is absolutely true. But one of the things you're also going to see, a lot of dogs, and well, not just dogs, a lot of animals graze on grass in the spring because it's sweet.
Yeah.
So if your dogs, are nibbling some grass in the spring, but they're fine the rest of the year, that it might not be a dietary thing. That could just be grass is really sweet in the spring.
Okay. All right. But if I were to transition him to your brand, the active would be, I mean, he's not, we train once a week, if not more, but when we're at seminars, it's like every day for 8 hours for 5 days or so.
If he keeps his weight on okay, the active would be fine. If you get in a situation where he starts losing weight, then you could probably switch over to the Power 30K.
Okay. Yeah, he's about 1.25 cups every day, every feeding too. So about 2.5 cups a day.
And how big is he?
He's about 52, 54 pounds.
So he'd probably do fine on the active. If you're feeding the Pro Plan Sport 3020, that's a 3020. Our active is a 2616, but our 26 feeds like they're 30. So the active would probably be a good place to start.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Hi there.
Hi, Ingrid.
No, it's Faith.
Oh, it's Faith. Okay, Faith.
There's no hope. Thank you so much. This is very interesting. Yeah. We're calling from Canada, and I don't think we can get it here.
Not yet.
Thanks, Dave. Can we?
Not yet, no.
No. Darn it.
And it's definitely on the radar, though.
We're not that far from the border, but we can't get across right now either. So.
Right, yeah, that's tough.
We have a 2.5-year-old Australian Labradoodle. She's my husband's service dog. She's been diagnosed with sebaceous endonitis. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but
not very. Tell me a little. What is it exactly?
Apparently, it affects the sebaceous glands that produces the oil for their fur and their skin.
Right. Yep.
So she has very, very dry skin. She gets like patches, almost like scabs patches, loses her hair. Her fur gets dry and she's very itchy at times and stuff. But the pictures that Dave had of the dog's ears where it was kind of chipped there, looking like you said, like a saw blade. Her ears looked like that for a bit. And then once we got her on the medication we're on, her ears are better, but she still keeps having these flare-ups of like she's on medication every day, but she still has this flare-up. Now, I don't know if it's because she's under stress where she's training as a service dog or at one point she had a bacterial infection on top of that. So we had to put her on antibiotic and that seemed to clear her up. But she's bathed twice a week and gets a spray on her coats. But I'm more concerned that maybe perhaps a change in her dog food could help.
It could potentially help, depending on, obviously the ability to look at exactly what you're feeding and read down the ingredient list can give us a little bit more insight. But
Right.
yeah, if possible, we like to treat things nutritionally as much as possible without treating it medically. And in a lot of cases, we can do that. There are a number of medical conditions we've been able to help people overcome just with advice. So even if you can't get our food up there, there are definitely some good foods available, and
Right.
supplements might be a choice for you as well.
Right. Well, she's on omega-3 oil every day.
That helps.
And we feed her liver. And sometimes cans of sardines and whatnot. So, but she's on a Canna, which is a Canadian company.
Yep.
Out of Alberta. And if I emailed you the ingredients, could you maybe give us some tips?
Would be happy to. Yeah, because the Kinetic is definitely it's certainly not an inexpensive food. So there's a lot of quality in it, but I do also know they use some fiber sources in that product that can be problematic with a working dog who's under stress. So yeah, send me the specific product you're using, and I'd be happy to weigh in and maybe even give you a suggestion or two of some products that we're familiar with that are in your market.
Oh, perfect. So it's John at kineticdogfood.com?
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. We'll get that off to you tonight or maybe tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right. We're on the East Coast, so it's later than you are.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, send it off to us.
Take care. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Now, Ingrid.
Hey, sorry, I'm using my wife's laptop. So, big fan of Kinetic. I mean, I've used it. I work at a board and train facility right now. Obedience, protection dogs as well.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen the nutritional value where we're loading up, one of our long-term protection dogs, like 5 cups, switch to Kinetics, instantly coats better, bulked up, real nice, even small breed dogs. Now, my question is, we had a canine drop out from a police department. Owners able to, keep him as a pet. Came to us real skinny. In my opinion, he's a long mountain wash, probably be in the 70s. Came at like 62 pounds. He was being fed. I couldn't tell you what he was being fed originally because it was like in a home bin. But he was getting 6 cups of that. Wasn't really wanting to eat all of it. Switched him over to Kinetic. He's eating 6 cups of it, but he is not gaining. I mean, we've taken him to the vet, get some blood samples. He's eating all of it though. Stool is pretty solid. I mean, no concerns in that regard. I haven't seen this before. The only thing I noticed originally was when he was still on his previous food, this guy is like on the hunt for some water, so we've increased his water intake. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before.
Which Kinetic formulas do you guys feed?
The 32K. The Ultra.
Okay, so you're on the 32. So yeah, if that's not putting weight on him, I don't know what more you could do from the dry kibble standpoint. It might help, and this is pretty rare. This might just be one of those dogs that's just super high octane.
Yeah, he's a pretty wiry dog.
How old?
I can tell you. Let me look up a little database. 2 years.
Okay, so still pretty young. That dog, the metabolism will probably start to slow down here, but if he's that wired, he's always going to be a pretty high octane dog. Something you might try is, especially with what you're mentioning about water, get some of our supplement and add that to the dry. Put that over top of the kibble and mix it with some warm water. So right before you feed, put some of our mass supplement on there. Swirl it with some good warm water, and that'll get him some hydration and some extra fat at the same time. That should help. Hopefully, that should help him get to the point where you can start scaling that food back. Because, 6 cups a day, unless he's 120-pound Mal,
nope,
that's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I'll definitely add that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Where are we at now? Okay, and Maria.
I gotta laugh at the giggles about the 120-pound Mel. I'm sitting here with a 116-pound, 1-year-old German Shepherd.
Oh my goodness.
This kid can burn through some food. So we do scent work, tracking. We play a little in bite sports, Mondio ring, not too much yet. Mostly because he's a giant and nobody wants to catch him. So I've always been a fan of fish-based foods simply for the extra oils. I think it's great for my dog's coats, all that.
Absolutely.
So if I was to switch to something like Kinetic, that seems to be a more chicken-based product, how do I make sure I'm not overfeeding the kid if I want to slap a chunk of, cooked salmon out of the oven on there?
Watch his weight, body condition. It's 100% body condition.
So it really is just a guessing game.
It is, and actually we adjust, especially when they're young. Like you sounds like yours is pretty young.
Yeah, he's 1.
Yeah, when they're that young, I mean, we adjusted our young ones as much as even more often than weekly, just to manage their body condition.
Mm-hmm.
Because they dependent on their activity level, and especially at that young age when their metabolism is just so hot. So I would watch it, scale the food back just a little bit, and if you're going to be adding that stuff in, but yeah, it's all about body condition. If you got to change amounts frequently, even, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because right now we're doing about 6 cups of kibble, a whole can of sardines, 2 raw eggs, and I mean he's still going over and nosing the food bowl. So.
Yeah, that's a lot, but that's a small pony you're running around out there.
Yeah, it really is. All right.
But,
so like I thought, it was really just kind of keep looking for ribs, and if you can't see the ribs anymore, cut the food back. Okay.
Right. And I'll volunteer. Dave will be happy to catch him.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Oh, you bet. CJ? Yeah, CJ.
Hey, so up from Canada, I've got my 3-year-old German Shepherd. We're getting ready to trial, but he's just struggling as it starts to get warmer. He's losing if it's a cool day, he's got energy for a long time. But once the temperature starts coming up, he's gassing out. Aside from like adding stuff to water, is there anything nutrition-wise I can do to help him in the heat?
Oh, so you're this could be as much of a management thing as a feeding thing. So when do you feed?
So I feed him once in the evening.
Okay, so that's actually good. And you don't work him after you feed him?
No, he works during the day, and then after we eat at 6:30 at night, he's done for the night.
Okay, that's perfect. So one of the things you mentioned is definitely an option. A supplement for the water to just kind of give them a little bit of boost during the day. That's one option. The other option is what's the protein and fat levels in the diet you're feeding?
So he is on 32K fat and 20K or 32% fat, 20% protein.
Okay, so that's not bad. Your protein ratio is a little.
Sorry, I said that backwards. I had a dyslexic moment. 32% protein, 20% fat.
Yeah, 32-20 then.
Yeah.
Okay, that's we would actually see with a protein level that high, we would like to see the fat to be higher. So a little closer number, your fat and protein be a little closer to get them burning fat. Because when they're burning fat, they're running more efficiently. So you might even look for something where even if the protein levels or if the fat level stayed the same, the protein got down a little. Dogs run much more efficiently burning fat than they do burning anything else, carbs, protein, anything else. If they're burning more fat, they are running at their peak efficiency. So that could help him run a little bit cooler if you take the protein level down a little bit, even if you keep the fat where it is. Okay,
so decrease protein, and that might help him run a little cooler. Cool.
Yeah, it certainly can. And the one thing you're doing though is fantastic. Feeding them once at night. If they're eating anytime close to before work, that dehydrates them and generates heat as well. So they're they're not going to want to go.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. I think that's everybody that's got a hand raised.
Hey, I'm computer illiterate here. Can't get my hand raised. Just quick question: how many cups of food are in your 35-pound bag?
Oh boy, I always have trouble remembering exactly. I think, let's see, of a physical measuring cup, I believe it's about 140 of them, of an actual measuring cup. I believe that's right.
Yeah, typically what we kind of use on that is a 35-pound bag of our food will feed a 60-pound dog for just around 5 weeks. So I know that doesn't answer your question, but
No, that's about perfect because I have a 60-pound dog. So that math worked perfectly. Thank you.
There you go. Let's see, Jocelyn.
Yes.
Perfect. Fire away.
I actually just wanted to get your email address again. I just started feeding raw, but he does get a cup of kibble with his raw. And would be interested in switching over. He's on Purina Pro plan right now. And I just kind of wanted to give you his diet, like email you his diet so that you can kind of navigate me through that. So could you share that with me again?
Yeah, it's just John, John, at kineticdogfood.com.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. All right. I'm not sure the name, but it says iPhone and your hand's up, so fire away.
Oh. Hey, good afternoon. This is Tanner from Las Vegas. Quick question for you as far as the byproducts. Can you explain that a little bit more? I know you kind of touched on the fat and what that might or might not consist of, but with byproducts, if it's not an actual meat, what I think the saying, or what I've been told, sometimes say with chicken byproducts, it could be beaks and feathers. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, they actually that's usually that's the kind of thing people say that don't really understand. Could there be feather in there? There could be a little bit of feather, just the same as there could be a little bit of feather in whole chicken or chicken meal. But there's a limit on how much of those extra things that could be in there. So like a maximum of like 1% of feather that could slip its way in there. Primarily the difference between chicken meal and chicken byproduct meal is with chicken byproduct meal, you're going to get extra things like you're going to get cleaned entrails. So heart, liver, even a little bit of the cleaned out intestines, things like that aren't just muscle meat. So that's what's in it. And the reason we use it is twofold. Number one, we actually tested our formulas without byproduct meal in them, chicken byproduct meal, and with chicken, with only, with it in there, and the dogs just did better. And really the reason they do better is because it's honestly, it's a more complete protein source. You get certain amino acids out of, for example, liver and kidneys that you don't get out of muscle meat. So it really is, if you told me that I had to increase the amount of either the regular chicken meal in our food or the chicken byproduct meal, and I made that decision on just the nutrition, I'd probably increase the byproduct meal before I would the full chicken meal. It's just a little bit more nutritionally complete.
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things that I like to use, and sometimes I'll do it when I'm doing the presentation, but when you think about it, like a wolf takes down a deer, or like a timber wolf goes after a deer, the first thing that they go after is the gut health. I mean, they go after the gut. So they're eating the entrails. You think about a bald eagle that takes a fish. First thing he goes after is the gut of the fish and then the head. And the reason is that's where all the complex, to John's point, carbohydrates, the amino acids and everything are in there. So that's a great question, though. And
yeah, good one.
I will tell you, if you go to that one website that I talked about, AAFCO, it has the industry standards, so you can look up every ingredient on there.
Yep.
Perfect. And then, to be honest, I haven't taken a look at your site too much yet. So as far as the other protein source, is you primarily use just chicken?
No, we use chicken, fish, and egg are our protein sources.
Okay.
Yep. And egg's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah.
It is the most bioavailable protein source there is for humans, dogs, and pretty much any other animal you want to put out there.
And then I know too, and I think, he kind of touched on it just as far as the fillers in, that's something too that you want to stay away from. So the corn, soy, and wheat. Yeah,
just because there's so much, like Dave talked about, the
more of a filler
4th of July thing. They are macro grains in the U.S., so there's all kinds of different strains, and they're growing all over the U.S. They deal with all kinds of different environmental conditions, drought, moisture. You just don't know what you're going to get. So we try to stick to more micro level grains that are a little bit more concentrated, less of these odd hybrids, and we feel like we can get more consistent quality that way.
All right. So then also with that, so with the foods with the grain, so staying away from the grain free, then those protein sources are coming directly from a meat source instead of, the legumes or chickpeas or whatever else. Then is that correct? And so it's
the problem with grain free isn't that they're absent of grain. It really comes down to and Dave listed there's 7 things in the food. So, depending on how much you consider moisture and stuff, but when they took the grain out, they had to put something in there for the starches. And when they did that, they generally put something in there that was less useful to the dog. And actually, in some cases, they put so much in it, it became harmful to the dog and started causing health issues. There is the amount of, for example, peas that they put in these grain-free diets is absolutely not healthy for the dog. And I can't say it any clearer than that. It is not helpful to the dog. They are not, it's an incomplete, they're using it for protein, they're using it for starch. It is not healthy for the dog. So I'm not saying none of those grain-free diets are okay. There's a handful out there that wouldn't be bad, but it was marketing driven. It was not nutrition driven. It never was.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, definitely a lot of good information. It's a saturated market and definitely can be misleading. So, I think it definitely, it helped everybody out. So thank you.
Excellent. You're welcome. Peter?
Good evening, guys. Hey, great job on that webinar. A lot of great information. So I do have a question because you touched on a bunch of topics that pertain to actually one of our dogs. So currently, most of our guys are on from Gold Adult.
Mm-hmm.
We tried moving our American Bulldog, our Old English Bulldog over to the From Adult, and she was originally on Blue Buffalo Lamb and Rice.
Mm-hmm.
We started noticing a problem with her, and then one morning we woke up and her stool was just bloody. It was coming out of her without her even knowing. It was really bad. We got her to the vet, and they said, "Oh, she has without doing any tests." They said, "My guess is it's a severe allergy to chicken." So we moved her back to Blue Buffalo Lamb and Rice, and she is on the pumpkin, and she is on the Abaquil, which are multiple things that you guys touched on tonight. I would like to keep everybody on the same food instead of having to purchase multiple bags of food. Any suggestions as far as she's concerned?
And even though you've switched back to a lamb formula, she's still having digestive issues?
No. Once she's back onto the lamb formula, she's off the From. And she was on From for a few weeks and didn't have a problem. And then it just blew up, and we moved her back to that. But she's back on the Blue Buffalo Lamb and Rice, but we're still giving her the pumpkin puree. Because she was probably having problems with her anal glands, and she is also still on Abaquil, which I'm probably going to try to pull her off in the next week or so.
Yeah, I would say that the apical I would definitely be concerned about. And like Dave talked about, that can definitely cause some liver issues. But the bigger issues that's causing, it's an immunosuppressing drug. So what it's doing, it's crushing the dog's natural immune system. It's crushing its ability to fight disease on its own. And what they're seeing is just tons and tons of dogs are getting cancer because their body is no longer fighting, using its natural immunity to fight off cancer. So you're seeing a lot of abdominal cancers showing up in dogs that are on this drug long term. So we've been in situations ourselves when we had to, for a very short period, be on that drug and got off it just as quickly as possible. As far as a food for, I'm not convinced if they didn't even test that the problem with that dog was chicken. Now, it could be chicken. It might not be chicken. We've seen a lot of issues just like that had nothing to do with the protein. But a lot of times when, and again, I'm with Dave. We've worked with a lot of veterinary professionals, and I'm certainly, when it comes to recommending medical treatments, I'm going to defer to them. But they just don't have a lot of nutrition things, and sometimes if they don't have the answer, they'll say, "Oh, it must be the food." So I'm not convinced the problem was the from, or even if it wasn't from, that it was the chicken. So I wouldn't be afraid to try something else, and at least make sure that it wasn't, because we get people that'll say, "Oh, we were on," and I won't pick on a particular brand, but we were on this brand, and they said it was, we had a lot of problems and it was a chicken allergy, and they'll switch over to our product, which has got plenty of chicken in it, and the dog just clears up and is perfectly fine. So I think a lot of times their answer is if they don't know the answer, they'll blame it on the food. Well, it might be the food, but it's not just the chicken. It could be a variety of things.
Right. And I sent Dave an email regarding our shepherds also. We have two shepherds that we use for sport. And they're on the farm right now. And I swear to God, there's more fur that is around his crate than it's on him. I mean, he's constantly just shedding all the time. And the picture that you guys posted in your presentation of the dog's nail splitting from the nail to the quick, he has the same exact problem. I have to keep his nails really short.
Yeah, there's and Fromm is a very nice company. It's a good family-owned business. I wouldn't disparage them at all, but I would say this: they don't have a diet that's particularly well geared for a working dog, a hardworking dog. It's really much more oriented toward companion pet. So while it is a very, they use quality ingredients, and I believe they're serious about quality, they're not really focused on these kind of dogs. So, take that how you will.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right. We're running long, so we're going to take one more, and it looks like it's Eve Robinson's iPhone. Let's see.
There we go. Hello.
Hey.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this. I have a question. I have a 3-year-old Gordon Setter. She was actually hand raised, so she's a little different and a little special. But she's actually an actual working search and rescue dog, working to be certified this August. She does have a lot of GI issues. She has pretty severe IBD, so I have to be very careful with fat, mainly with her. Otherwise, proteins aren't typically an issue. She is fairly picky, unfortunately, with food, but currently she's eating Stella and Chew, which I'm okay with. I'm not necessarily gung-ho about, but was debating on trying your food. I just don't know which one, so I don't overwhelm her with fat, but also give her the correct protein. She does run a lot. We do agility once a week and do SAR training at least once to twice a week, and she can do on any given day 5 to 15 miles.
Oh, yeah. So she's working.
She works.
Yeah. So probably your best bet. Yeah, still in chewies. That's a dry raw, right? Isn't it?
Yes. So far it's been one of the few that she likes the most and doesn't give me a hard time about eating. I just have to be very careful with the fat, but also she does need fiber in her diet because otherwise she actually gets pretty constipated.
Okay. So yeah, that's probably a situation. We would probably, in a circumstance like that, we would probably not recommend our 30 or 32.
Okay.
As you put more protein and fat in there, you're removing the fiber and carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So yeah, in circumstances like that, I would probably say our active 26K would be your best bet.
Okay.
Because it's got a lower level of fat than our 30 and 32, and the corresponding increase in fiber and carbohydrates.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I would also, if you're dealing with digestive issues, our bio supplement, and we didn't cover that a lot in the presentation. There is not a better digestive health supplement on the market than that stuff. I mean, it is absolutely, it is amazing. We keep a jug of that. If you go out and get working, your dog gets into something, one dose of that can clear up major digestive issues. And I mean, we've had dogs that were potentially, we actually had one where they said they were going to have to put the dog down. And we fixed that dog in 2 days with that supplement. So pretty.
And then do you guys do anything for joints or no?
We don't do a joint supplement. There's some pretty good ones out there. And if you'd like a recommendation on that, feel free to shoot me an email or something.
Okay.
We use some of those as well. And so there are some good ones out there. That's why we didn't make one. There's some good trustworthy ones on the market.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right.
Well,
thank you.
Dave and John, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. Clearly a ton of really good information for all of our members and all of the visitors that came in today. So truly thank you both for that. If there's anything we can do for you guys in the future, please feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.
No, we really appreciate it, Ryan. And for the whole group, listen, it's Dave at kineticdogfood.com or John at kineticdogfood.com. If you have a question and you want to send a nutritional profile to us, we'll take a look at it for you. We'll certainly get back to you. But Ryan, it was a wonderful event, and we absolutely appreciate the opportunity to share knowledge with your group. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, guys. You have a great evening, and maybe we can do another one of these in the future.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. And thank you all for joining us today. Be on the lookout for future webinars that we've got, as well as in-person training. But again, huge thanks to Kinetic and Dave and John today. So with that, everybody have a great night.
Take care.